Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our webinar, Lactation and Breastfeeding with a Disability, presented to you by the Lurie Institute for Disability Policies, National Research Center for Disability, National Center for Disability and Pregnancy Research. We are so glad that you're here. My name is Nicole Lamerson, and I am a research associate at the Lurie Institute, working both on our disability and pregnancy activities and research, as well as our research related to parents with disabilities. In addition to being a researcher, I am also a physically disabled mom to a 9-year-old daughter, and I use a wheelchair. This particular topic is near and dear to my heart. As a brief visual description, I'm a white person with dark brown hair tied back in a bun. I'm wearing pink headphones and a black sweater. Before we get started with today's presentation, I want to just very quickly go over some accessibility and Zoom information. Next slide, please. Interpreters and presenters for this webinar today will be spotlit. We will not be using the interpretation function. And additionally, closed caption is available by clicking on the CC button. If you have any issues with accessibility, interpretation, or Zoom in general, please let us know in the chat. And if you are using ASL, in order to see the interpreters properly, it is best that you join with a laptop. So if you're on your phone and if you are able, please rejoin us on a laptop. We've limited the chat for accessibility reasons. We want to make sure that we can see any accessibility concerns that are happening. So in the chat, will just be for communicating with hosts and panelists and our tech support. So please do let us know. We'll be using the Q&A function for you to ask questions. Please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A button. And if we run out of time and we're unable to address all questions, we will be sending out a Q&A document with resources and answers to the questions we did not get to. Finally, this is a Zoom webinar, which means your cameras will not be on. Only the presenters and hosts will be seen, and this webinar will be recorded. We will be sending out the recording of the webinar to everyone who registered once that recording is ready. And I just want to give you a little bit of background on the National Center for Disability and Pregnancy Research. We are a NIDLR-funded initiative. NIDLR is the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. They are our funders, but the viewpoints are in this presentation are those of our presenters alone, not necessarily a reflection of our funders. And just to give you a little background on us, at the National Center for Disability and Pregnancy Research, we address gaps in knowledge about pregnancy and disability by looking at data sources to more fully examine perinatal care, complications, and outcomes, particularly in disabled people of color. We work to develop evidence-based interventions that support the pregnancy experiences of disabled people, and we promote optimal pregnancy outcomes, health and well-being for all pregnant people with disabilities. And next slide. I'm going to introduce our first panelist. Alesha Thomas is the founder of the Adaptive Parent Project, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to empowering parents with disabilities. She was diagnosed at the age of 1 with spastic diplegia cerebral palsy, and she received her bachelor's degree in human biology from the University of California, San Diego. After the birth of her son, Nolan, in 2019, she started sharing adaptive parenting techniques on YouTube. because she could not find many resources or supports for parents with disabilities. In 2021, she was named the Area Changemaker, and the Adaptive Parenting Project became an official nonprofit. In 2024, she completed the UC San Diego Extended Studies Lactation Program and is now an international board certified lactation consultant, or IBCLC. And she specializes in providing care to families with disabilities. She strives to help disabled parents and their families thrive and is passionate about educating healthcare professionals who work with people with disabilities. And now I'm going to turn it over to Alesha.
Hi, my name is Alesha Thomas, and I'm going to give a visual description of myself. I'm a white female. I have dark brown hair. I'm wearing purple glasses and a black top.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So a little bit more about me. When, like Nicole said, when my son was born in 2019, I really struggled to find resources and support for myself. And I was just like, I don't feel like there's that much out there. And especially when I was pregnant, I felt so isolated because it's not like you go to a prenatal class and you see a bunch of people with disabilities or something like that. So I was like, I really want to change this. And so then I decided to start sharing my parenting techniques on YouTube with the hopes of getting other parents to join in. And in 2021, ARI, which is a division of American Eagle Outfitters, had a contest called Changemakers. And so I submitted a 2-minute video about how I helped a quadriplegic mom with twins put her twins to bed independently for the first time. You may have heard of the documentary Danny's Twins. And so I was able to help Danny put her twins to bed independently. And because of this opportunity, with Airy Changemakers, our nonprofit was born. Next slide, please. Oh, my journey to becoming a lactation consultant was a long one. From the time I was literally a toddler, from the earliest I can remember, 3 years old, I always wanted to have a role in the medical field. And my original plan was to become a physician assistant, and that didn't work out for several reasons. I will never forget one day I was talking to a physician assistant program, and the university was like, well, if you don't know how to jump on and off an ambulance, we don't know how to help you. And so, and that wasn't the only reason that I didn't end up going to PA school, but there was just a multitude of health reasons. And so, I decided after starting my nonprofit and my own breastfeeding journey of breastfeeding Nolan for 4.5 years, and he was born at 36 weeks because I was preeclamptic and I had to be under general anesthesia because I have a baclofen pump to help with my spasticity. And there was no provider that was comfortable placing an epidural or a spinal block for someone like me. And I didn't even find that out until 34 weeks. So I was obviously devastated because no parent wants to miss the birth of their child. And so after completing a healthcare and safety grant with the California um, Department of uh, Developmental Disabilities, I decided that I really wanted to, I still felt this really deep need to help people with disabilities. And so the opportunity to take virtual classes with the UC Extended Studies Pathway 2 program came about, and I talked to the program extensively. But because of my background in human biology and preparing for PA school years prior, I had everything I needed to be able to take this program. And after talking to a lot of lactation consultants, everybody was like, there's nobody that we know of with physical disabilities. There wasn't a lot of support as far as disability informed providers. I knew a few, but not that many. And so I took this opportunity to really dive in and be able to help parents with disabilities, especially in a virtual setting. So it allowed me to combine my experience of um, being a parent with a disability and also like just being able to validate and emphasize with parents, but also having that mindset of like becoming the provider I needed. Because when I was in the hospital with Nolan, we were in there for 6 days because of issues with my blood pressure. But because he was born at 36 weeks, he tired very quickly at the breast and we were having to triple feed. So, I was breastfeeding him and then I was pumping and then we were using like SNS feeding and like a little tube for him to be able to get more milk while he was breastfeeding because he would tire so quickly. And so, all of that, I wanted to be able to take my adaptive mindset and help parents, but be a safe space because so often in healthcare, especially when you're a person with a disability and you become a parent, there's a lot of people that will, come into your hospital room and judge you for being a parent. I had some nurses that literally wouldn't leave my side because they were convinced I was going to drop my son on the floor. And so I had great lactation consultants. I was fortunate and I knew to ask for OT both in the hospital and when I was going home, but that support wasn't enough. And so that's why now I'm partnering with the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences, and we're offering a virtual OT clinic for parents with disabilities to be able to support them on their parenting journeys. But I believe that every parent deserves access to support that honors their abilities and values their lived experiences. And so to me, it's just really important that I'm able to help as many families as I can, whether the parent is disabled, the child is disabled, or somebody just reaches out and they really decide they want um, to work with me. And a big part of that is I have a really big passion for educating healthcare providers, and that's why transdisciplinary care is so important because when we work together, um, it supports the resources for parents with disabilities, and it's so crucial because being a part of this clinic that I'm doing, and right now we're able to serve parents in California and now Arizona. We're waiting for the occupational therapy compact to come through. Um, so hopefully that will come through soon once it goes through Congress and we'll be able to help even more people. And the people I'm working with are looking to get licensed in more states. But we want people to feel safe. So often when you walk into a healthcare setting, there is so much judgment and there's so many healthcare providers that'll be like, oh, there was one sentence or one page about a certain disability or something in their textbook, and people often don't realize that being disabled and having a disability or acquiring a disability is something that you can um something that can happen to you at any time. Like nobody is immune to disability. And so with this OT clinic that we're doing, we really want to take the transdisciplinary approach. And I really like getting to work with clients because I'm working with OTs and OT students. So the OT students are getting to really open their mind and see like a whole another sector of OT that they may have not even considered. And so we have resources on our website. For example, we have um, Jordan Murillo, who's partnered with us. She's the baby wearing OT and she does adaptive baby wearing consultations. We have Wheel Good Motherhood um, for free monthly support groups that's ran by Dr. Lindsay Earl Ray in partnership with NorCal SCI. And we have a ton of resources on our website, including links to our parenting clinic and how you can register if you're in California or Arizona. The nice thing about me being an IBCLC as far as lactation support is I can support parents anywhere, wherever you are. Um, it could support anybody and everybody wherever you are. So as far as me being an IBCLC, I don't have any limitations, but as far as the occupational therapy clinic right now, we're only able to see people in California and Arizona. But if you're in another state, please reach out to us because the University of St. Augustine has other campuses, so we might be able to connect you and figure out how to make it work. But we just really want to be a space where we can empower parents with disabilities worldwide and be a safe space where people know that they can come for resources and support. And hopefully, a big part of our project is going to be educating healthcare providers from all sorts of disciplines, whether it be um, rehabilitation medicine, primary care, occupational therapy, physical therapy, dentistry, you name it. We want to be a part of it. And so I'm really grateful that I've had this opportunity and now I can be an IBCLC and hopefully help other people because breastfeeding is most definitely a journey. And when you have a disability, no matter what that disability is, it can have extra challenges. But um, no matter what we encounter, my job is to help make sure everybody is supported, baby is fed, and everybody is happy. And I just really look forward to being able to help as many people as I can. And I'm really excited.
Alesha, thank you so much. Um, Amy, can you hear me? Oh, there I am. I couldn't see myself on the screen. Thank you so much. I'm seeing some comments in the chat looking for Alesha's resources and contact information. And we will be providing all of that in a resource document once we send out the recording. So no worries, it will all be coming to you. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker, who is Elizabeth Campbell Soper. And Elizabeth is a disabled mom, writer, and advocate within the dwarfism and cross disability communities. She brings both personal experience and community knowledge to conversations about accessible, affirming care, including the realities of lactation, feeding, and parenting as a little person. Elizabeth lives in Southern California with her husband and her child, and their family shares the lived experience of achondroplasia. She is passionate about creating space for disabled parents to be seen, heard, and supported without having to justify or explain their bodies. And I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth. Next slide, please. There we go.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Nicole. My name is Elizabeth Campbell Soper. Before I dive in, I just want to share that I have written a script today. I get passionate, and so I tend to get animated and ping pong around on ideas. This helps me stay grounded. It's also out of respect for our ASL interpreters and the accuracy of captions. I know how important clear communication is. So I have achondroplasia dwarfism. It's spelled Achondroplasia. So thank you, Nicole. You pronounced it beautifully. I'm a mom, Southern California native, and a cross disability rights advocate. I care deeply about how we build systems that truly include us, and I also love to shake things up when they don't. I'm also someone who's lived these challenges firsthand, as I am someone with both apparent and invisible disabilities. This is the perspective I bring today. The picture on the screen is a headshot of me pre-COVID while I was working within disability rights and community organizing. I'm wearing a light-colored knitted top, my long dark hair is covering my shoulder, and I'm smiling. While now my dark blonde hair is shoulder length, my body proportions have not changed. As I mentioned before, I have achondroplasia dwarfism, which is the most common form of skeletal dysplasia. There are over 400 types of dwarfism, and each one comes with its own set of unique characteristics. Dwarfism causes short stature, and generally it means that they will not reach an adult height. Or excuse me, generally this means that we are at adult height at or below 4'10". 80% of people with dwarfism are born to parents without dwarfism as it is a random genetic mutation occurring at conception. My average height parents knew that I would have achondroplasia before I was born, as it was picked up on an ultrasound when my mom was 7 months pregnant with me. Within my community, it's common to describe someone without dwarfism as being of average height. If you hear me reference that descriptor, it simply means that I'm describing someone without dwarfism. It's not a jab, I promise. For folks with achondroplasia, we're disproportionate and our arms and legs are much shorter than average. Our heads are slightly larger. Our torsos are about the same size without someone with dwarfism. If I was sitting next to you at a table, we would be eye level. Some people use the term little person, but I don't personally ascribe to it as it feels too vague. I find strength in identifying with my specific genetic condition, just like some folks with osteogenesis imperfecta. We're both under the umbrella term of dwarfism, but our experiences and bodies are very different. Person with dwarfism is fine, midget is not. This slide shows two images side by side. The first is an AI-generated concept image based on my body's proportions. The second is a real photo of me smiling at 38 weeks pregnant. I'm standing with my hands resting on my very large belly. As someone living with multiple disabilities, it means I'm forced to think 10 steps ahead, not because my body, but because of how systems fail to consider them. COVID-19 lockdown didn't break the system, it exposed it. When everything shut down, the usual gaps in support became gaping holes. Peer support was gone. In-home lactation consultant didn't exist. Provider guidance tailored to disabled bodies, especially my body, didn't exist. And yet the expectation stayed the same. Nurture your newborn, recover from birth, adapt. I was isolated and scared. Please go back. I'm skipping ahead a little bit. While I had a virtual community, I had no guidance for what this would look like in my body. My parents and all of my dwarf mentors were 6 hours away. There are no pamphlets, no books written by and for us, meeting us where we are and not just from a medical or deficit model, instructing providers just how to make sure they don't kill us. This was rough. I was alone and I had a lot of time to research. One way I processed information was by reading and rereading, so I quite literally needed a book. When I found this, The Disabled Woman's Guide to Pregnancy and Birth by Judith Rogers, I was so excited, but so much of it was completely inapplicable to me as only 2 women with achondroplasia were included. It was also published when the ADA was barely a thing. So I want to name something. And I didn't quite realize it until I was preparing for this webinar. I felt lost back then, but now I truly understand why, and I have the words to name it. There's a deep lack of ancestral knowledge within the dwarfism and disability communities because until recently, women with dwarfism weren't surviving pregnancy, birth, or motherhood. My husband, Declan's dad, is a second-generation person with achondroplasia, and he was only born in the late 80s. This really sits heavy on my heart, and it's a big reason why I'm here today. I am who I needed 5 years ago, and I'm incredibly proud that Declan, our son, is a 3rd generation. Because somewhere along the way, the system changed, and disabled mothers of all kinds finally got the chance. Next slide. Because of the shape of our pelvis and the curvature of our lower backs, women with achondroplasia aren't able to safely deliver full-term babies vaginally. But his birth was the beginning. Disabled people are masters of adapting, but parenting pushes it to an entirely different level. Declan spent much of the first year in the hospital, and each admission brought a new set of challenges. On the slide is two pictures. On the left is my husband, Declan, and I laying down with our heads together. We're sitting up smiling at the camera. The right one is of me with my back to the camera, squatting, balancing on the top of a four-step stool, leaning over the side of a hospital crib. The crib was wildly inaccessible for both of us as the mattress of the bed came up to my chin. It was a special kind of helplessness when you can't reach your own baby. These kind of barriers are everywhere, and yet they're invisible unless you've lived them. Can anybody spot the accommodation in each photo? How they both allowed me to feed Declan while he was in the hospital? I'll give you a moment. The picture on the left, we're laying on several physical therapy gym mats that one devoted nurse found for us and spread out on the corner of his hospital room so I could nurse Declan side lying. The picture on the right is a blue step stool that I would sit on and pump while Declan was in bed when it was too hard to get him out of bed. I didn't know I could ask for these things, but I'm grateful for the providers who took the initiative to figure out what could work and asked what we needed. My milk didn't dry up despite being under an incredible amount of stress, so as long as my body wanted to, I was going to keep going. Next slide. Things I wish inpatient providers had known. I couldn't lift him easily or hold him with my arms the way many average height people do. I have very few pictures of us breastfeeding as we were right back in the hospital when he was 18 days old. But I'm going to explain a little bit about our inpatient experience. You can't tell on the picture on the left because I'm wearing a mask, but I'm terrified by pace feeding, the bottle feeding method where the baby sits upright and the bottle is held horizontally to the floor. You have to carefully hold and support baby and bottle. I'm sitting in a green hospital recliner with a wobbly medically fragile newborn perched on my lap. My femur is only about a foot long. And with my healing belly, I maybe only had about 8 inches of lap space. I wish I had put a sticker or an emoji where my knee is because it's close to my hand. It's not out in front of me. He kept sliding, and everyone around me was constantly rearranging pillows and blankets. How was I supposed to recreate this at home? I include the middle picture to try to help further explain my proportions. This is a close-up of Declan nursing. That's his head, that's my breast, and then there's my hand. I have a 7-inch hand span. The average woman's is 9, but I have 2-inch long fingers. I quite literally don't have a grasp on breastfeeding. So anyone working directly with new moms with dwarfism, it's super unhelpful when you say hold your breast like a hamburger and flatten it. Hand expressions for colostrum were very difficult as well. The right photo shows Declan lying on his side on a breast friend pillow while I'm in the same green hospital recliner. I'm exhausted but at peace. I felt much more secure and confident holding him because I could use my free arm to support his back. Something to keep in mind for people with dwarfism, we don't have the ability to stabilize ourselves by putting our feet on the ground when we're sitting. Stools are fantastic, but in this scenario, I needed much more support. Next slide. These two pictures are exactly a year apart. One is Declan, just a few days old, nursing side lying, and one on the right is a week after his first birthday. Being freshly postpartum was an experience, so forget trying to breastfeed when you can't hold your baby. I thought I was a failure. I couldn't do the cradle hold or the football hold. It was just physically impossible for me to be able to hold him. Breastfeeding wasn't intuitive and something many what to expect books leave out. Since it's a team effort, it was incredibly vulnerable. Consent is everything, and as disabled people, many of us have developed a heightened awareness of where our bodies are in space because we've had to. It's a specialized skill, and it's a drain we don't always talk about. I've been touched, picked up, and moved without my consent more times than I can count. Thankfully, it happens less now that I'm an adult, but the memories have stayed. So, In medical settings, having strangers, albeit passionate ones, touching my body was very hard. Providers, please always explain what you're doing before you touch a patient. This should be a standard. This is not about emotion, it's about dignity, autonomy, and safety. After much trial and error, just like everything else, suddenly everything made sense when we were sidelined. Thankfully, I had creative lactation consultants who made things work. A shout out to Miss Donita. We haven't forgotten you. She had the idea to wrap a baby blanket into a rectangular scarf, putting it behind Declan's back so I could hold onto it. If you can see here in the left photo, it's partly under his side wrapped around him, and I'm holding it taut to keep us belly to belly. We survived like this until discharged and then had to figure out new ways to support each other once we got home. Each stage brought new challenges and new solutions. The pictures on the right, you can tell Declan is a year old, and through his core and head control, he was able to get it into a position that worked for him. Yes, we're both laying in a hospital crib. Yes, his doctors knew. Yes, his nurses knew. They were not happy, but we made it work. As he got stronger, it made nursing easier for both of us, and we were finally able to relax and bond just much later. Next slide. As a reminder, the Bay Area was much slower when things were opening back up after COVID lockdown. Moms groups were fractured and the local La Leche League had dissolved. It was a cruel irony living so close to the birthplace of the U.S. disability rights movement, but I had no disabled village to lean on. I had to figure it out on my own. As the world reopened, so did we, and as Declan got stronger, positions got easier. Feeding doesn't stop when you leave the house. The daily demands of pumping and bottles was too much, so I always had a breast friend pillow in the car, but it wasn't easy to lug around. I still needed to get creative. On the photo on the left, we're outside at a restaurant. I'm sitting in a chair with one leg up, resting on the table. Declan's head and torso are lying across it with his bottom in my lap. I'm using it to help him nurse, and like a modified cross cradle. The center picture of him is with a bottle of breast milk. To the right, we're out to a restaurant again. He's nursing sitting up with his legs straddling me. My legs are on a high chair that's underneath the table to stabilize us. No one told me how to do it. I just had to figure it out because I had to. So, where are we today? Next slide. We are back in Southern California, and Declan is skateboarding, swimming, and going to preschool, and generally living his best life. He's currently 4.5, and we nursed for almost 4 years, through surgeries, milestones, and all of the unknowns. All of this adapting was for him, but it was also for me. Disabled parents shouldn't have to struggle to feed our children. We need care that's informed, flexible, and built for our bodies and brains. For practitioners, please be patient, be adaptable, and be ready to meet us where we are. And for my fellow disabled parents, trust your gut, set boundaries, ask for consent, claim space. You deserve care that respects your body and your choices and your role as a parent. You are not alone. We've always been here. I love my shape, my body, and my life, and I've had the privilege of creating and sustaining it, and I will never stop fighting for it to be honored. Thank you so much for listening to our story.
Oh my goodness, Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think for myself, and if we have other disabled moms in the chat, your pictures bring back a lot of memories. And I really appreciate you being so open and sharing your story with us. I'm going to introduce our next panelist, who is Norma Morán, Norma holds dual roles at Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. She is an associate ombuds in the Office of the Ombuds and the interim director of Nuestra Casa, Center for Latin Deaf Studies. In addition to her career, Norma is actively involved in her community. She serves as the chair of the Maryland Advisory Council for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing under the Maryland Governor's Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. She is also on our advisory board at the National Center for Disability and Pregnancy Research, and we always appreciate so much her contributions. And in addition to that, she and the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, she is a part of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Child Resilience Center at Gallaudet University. She has also co-authored a toolkit for USAID titled Universal Design for Learning to Help All Children Read, promoting literacy for learners with disability. She obtained her bachelor's from Rochester Institute of Technology and has a master's from American University in Washington, D.C. And now I'm going to turn it over to Norma.
Thank you, Nicole. My name is Norma. I'm going to give a visual description. I'm a Latina woman with brown hair. I have a bright colored Mexican shirt with glasses and earrings. I have a solid blue background behind me. And it has been wonderful being able to listen to the story from Elizabeth and Alesha. And I'm here with a bit of a different story. So I am a deaf woman, and I have 3 children. My first child was born in 2006. My second child was born in 2014, and my third in 2015. There are so many differences between the generations, the era, the society's perspectives with each child. My first child in 2006 was my first time being a mom. And I had taken birthing classes. I was really excited and motivated. And those birthing classes had nothing to do with breastfeeding. I did not retain any of that information or learn any of that information at that time. Social media was not widely used. I didn't see blogs or vlogs. I didn't have access to that information. We, at that time, were just using Yahoo and AIM chat to be able to talk with each other online. So I saw people discussing about vaginal birth and what that process looked like, but I didn't see anything about lactation, and that was information deprivation regarding breastfeeding. I had no clue at that time. So when I gave birth to my first child, I had an interpreter there during labor and during birth, and then I had no interpreter thereafter. So I used this book. These are my notes of writing back and forth with doctors, with nurses, with different medical staff in the hospital. Pages upon pages of notes of different people coming in and out of my room, having to write back and forth. Imagine just giving birth. You haven't slept enough. It's the first child you've had. You have no understanding of what to expect, and then you have to write back and forth all of your communication. When I read those notes now, I realize how much I went through, how much access was limited, how many words I didn't understand. For example, the word latch, I had no idea what that meant, or letdown, or engorged.
Hi, I'm so sorry to interrupt. It seems that people are having trouble seeing Norma right now, and I suspect that's because of Zoom's ableist. They don't show, it doesn't show people who are not making audible sound. Norma, is it okay if we stop sharing your screen so people can see you And with your permission, I can add your pictures to the chat.
I think if Norma takes herself off mute, that might solve this problem.
Oh, we can try that.
And someone is saying that they can see her. Folks are saying they can see her in the chat. Apologies, everyone.
Yeah, it seems people can see me okay.
For people who cannot see her, can you please try and
Maybe if you
join
click
your
on gallery
laptop?
view.
Okay, keep going and we'll resolve the tech issues. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So this notebook that I had to advocate for myself, advocate for my baby. And I read one line that said, "You have to feed more." And I was like, how? I'm trying. So I felt really deflated. I was already feeling awkward. And then I had a medical staff telling me these things, and that was adding stress and adding more negative thinking. And I did not deserve that. So that was my experience with my first child. And I'm here in Washington, D.C., and one person who is a lactation consultant and is really well known in this area. I had heard a lot of positive things about this person. So I went ahead and scheduled an appointment with them. And again, we had to write back and forth. They didn't have any patience to write back and forth with me and just push me along. So again, I felt frustrated. I felt blocked. I was struggling and gave up. I tried to be able to use a breast pump, and I had no explanation of how to use a breast pump. I ended up giving up and switching to formula. Now my child is 19 and is an adult, and that was my first experience with in 2006. And then my second child was born in 2014, and there were improvements at that time. I had an interpreter during labor, during the birth, and afterward. And wow, that made a world of a difference. So I had an interpreter to be able to see everything, meaning this notebook I have for my first child, I don't have a duplicate for my second child. I have no memory of nothing to remember that back and forth conversation because it was all done in sign language. So that breastfeeding information that I was able to get during the second child was not always easy to understand. I still struggled. For a while, I felt betrayed, wondering, why does everyone make it sound like it is so easy? Why am I not able to do this? Why am I not getting it? And I remember one memory that the lactation consultant was speaking, and I looked up at the interpreter. I looked down, and I'm a visual learner. I need to be able to see, to understand, to be able to do it myself. But when I looked over at the lactation consultant and then looked up at the interpreter, looked down at my baby, looked down at my own breasts, having my eyes looking in different directions, I was split. And that really weighed on my mind, trying to keep my attention on all three spaces at the same time. But I was able to breastfeed. I couldn't exclusively breastfeed. I was not able to exclusively breastfeed and ended up switching to exclusively pumping. But even that didn't last long. Again, I ended up switching to formula. So each time that happened, I felt like I had failed, like society had failed that vision of a perfect mother who is able to breastfeed their child. And that caused a lot of self-doubt. With my third child, born in 2015, I know my last two are only 1 year apart, but wow. My last baby, I've got the picture here on the screen. That is my third. Finally, my body was able to cooperate. Now I had the opposite problem, and I had an oversupply. So each child had a completely different experience. With my third child in 2015, what helped was social media. I saw more vlogs. I saw people signing and explaining. I was able to FaceTime and speak with other deaf moms to be able to talk about what their experience was. I could be able to have more access. My hearing consultants were more motivated to be able to make sure that the classes were accessible and to provide ASL. I remember the lactation consultant was hearing and had signed through Skype. And that was the first time in 2015 to be able to have that direct communication of signing. But it was baby steps. So the information deprivation from the first two children were really serious. It's important to be able to have content that's accessible, to be able to see it in sign language, to be able to reduce the weight of having your attention split, to be able to focus fully and see it in sign language. And it's not only communication access, but society's perspectives, society's attitudes had started to change. With my third child, I was not so worried about covering up and seeing what people had, what their opinions were of people breastfeeding in public. I had seen on social media and Facebook of people bullying mothers who were breastfeeding in public, and I didn't want to have the same happen to me. So I was always covering up. And that is something that had continued to weigh on my mind. I wanted to make sure that I was following people's expectations, making sure that people were okay with it, needing to prioritize my son rather than the expectations of others. So you can see this picture here. There's a funny story behind it. This was on Halloween, obviously. My whole family was dressed up as Spider-Man. And after the event, we were so hungry that we went to a restaurant. I didn't have a blanket with me, and I just breastfed my son. And it's in my Halloween costume. When I look at that picture, it looks like it was so easy. But the reality is that it wasn't. From 2006 to 2015, 2016, so much pain, frustration, grief had happened in my journey to be able to get to that picture where I'm breastfeeding without coverage, and it looks so easy there. But I'm really grateful to be able to have that experience to understand, so I'm able to support others because all three of my children had such a different experience. Could you go on to the next slide, please? And again, for communication access and society's views and attitudes, they're really connected. For me, they're connected. And here, again, I was worried about covering. This picture on the left, I was running a symposium and I happened to be on stage giving a presentation, and my son was hungry. So I went ahead and fed my son while I was on stage. And again, people were looking and thinking, oh, that's cute, they're sweet. But there's so much of a journey that happened for me to get to the point to be able to do that. Pictures look like it's perfect, but that's not true. It took a lot of hard work and pain to be able to get to this point. And right now, in 2025, there are improvements, but we still have a long way to go. We need more resources, more support. Could you go on to the next slide, please? So I want to spotlight that this December, we're having or in DC, we have a wonderful group called the DC Breastfeeding Coalition. And that is run by a hearing person who has shown wonderful allyship for the deaf and signing community. They always make sure that there are classes available that are accessible in ASL, that interpreters are provided, and that other deaf parents are encouraged to go and take the lactation classes. And they can become consultants themselves. They're encouraged to do so. And they have set up their first Deaf Breastfeeding Week. It is the International Lactation Consultant Association for Breastfeeding Awareness Month in September. So that is hosted virtually, and it is a week long on September 16th to 22nd. If you look at the QR code, it says that it is, you can scan the QR code and it will pop up to Facebook, and it shows everything that is happening that week. Please go ahead and follow them. They're a wonderful resource, and we need more people to join us and to make sure that everything is accessible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Norma. I appreciate everything you shared with us, and I especially love the picture of you giving a talk while you're breastfeeding. That is a true pro move right there. Total professional. I love it. Panelists, if we could all have you turn your cameras back on, and if we could take down the slides, we will be putting a link in the chat to our survey and how you can find us. But we have time for Q&A, which makes me very happy. I'm going to address as many of these as I can, and the rest will be coming in a Q&A document. We have lots of comments in the Q&A, thanking all of you for your stories. A real quick note, we cannot provide continuing education credits for this webinar, but you are welcome to submit the webinar yourself if you'd like to try to get credits on your own. We're working on finding more accrediting bodies to accredit more of our webinars. Let's see here. Scrolling all the way down. All right, I am a doula, lactation specialist, and CPR instructor that would like to serve more towards families with disabilities. And this person is asking, growing their knowledge with ASL, and would truly appreciate any help or I could across the board with the work that I'm doing. Do you have any suggestions for folks who are new to wanting to work with disabled parents and disabled pregnant people about reaching out and providing disability-centered care?
I'll take that question if that's okay.
Yeah.
I think for me, the biggest thing is transdisciplinary care. So partnering with other parents with disabilities, or for example, with our organization, when you're working with clients, if they're comfortable with that, I think that really helps because the disabled person can help like validate and empathize with them. And it helps everybody's learning journey from what I've seen since I've been doing this clinic for the past couple months. So that's one way to get into it. Then you could also reach out to like La Leche League and Postpartum Support International.
Alesha, can you describe the phrase transdisciplinary and what you mean by that?
So transdisciplinary care is working with people from multiple facets. So the best way I can describe it is giving the example of the OT clinic. So when we do this clinic, it's a occupational therapist, it's occupational therapy students, and it's me working with them. So we're all coming from different disciplines to help support the same goal of supporting the parent. I'm sure there's like a more technical definition that I don't know off the top of my head. Um, but that's basically we're all coming together from different disciplines to support everything.
Another question, what is the best thing a lactation consultant can do to support you in your breastfeeding journey or support any disabled parent in their breastfeeding journey?
Check your bias at the door.
Does anybody else want to add anything?
This is Elizabeth. I think for me, acknowledging, especially if it's a new mom, like first time mom, acknowledging that this is you're learning and the baby is learning and that they as a practitioner are also going to be learning with you. It's really, it was really overwhelming and overbearing to have specialists come in and say, well, this is how we're going to do it. And it's like, okay, well, that's great, but you're not meeting me where I'm at. And I have no idea what I'm doing. So I think that that would have been really helpful for me to just acknowledge that and then talk about it and figure it out together.
I have a question here for Norma. I am a lactation consultant who works in the community. I recently had a mom who needs breastfeeding education and she is hearing impaired. I was able to connect with the interpreter service through the community, but it is very expensive. How do I find out what is available in my community?
So in regards to interpreter cost, I mean, it is what it is. But you know, there's other ways to get creative. You can try to reach out for pro bono services. You can contact, you know, other agencies and try to figure out who specializes, you know, in birthing and care and try to, you know, work the system and navigate that. You could reach out to a college interpreter training program possibly, but it really just depends on, you know, what that deaf person needs in their area and what they feel is a best fit for them. But you might have to look for other ways to be creative. And then also, you know, providing the proper content through sign language as well. You know, you want to find someone who has the right skill sets, and they also have to determine if it's something they want to do in person or virtually. You know, having a transcript or, you know, something to that effect with some of the vocabulary and knowledge, you know, could be helpful as well. And then just accommodating that way as well as interpreter availability.
Thank you. We have time for one last question. And I love this one because it's very nuts and bolts. How do you breastfeed with only one hand to hold a baby? Alesha, do you want to address that one? You're on mute.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Oh, absolutely. So there are several ways to do this as far as positioning, depending on the age of the baby and their trunk control and their head control. But there are really great supports, such as the Joey band that's used for skin to skin. When Elizabeth showed that she was using the receiving blanket to hold Declan against her body, belly to belly, this immediately made me think of the Joey band, but you can also use other pillow supports, especially if you can get a strap behind them if you don't want something or need something different than the My Breast Friend, because that can be a little bit bulky. But if you have questions, definitely reach out and I can brainstorm with you. Just with that limited information in the question, it's hard for me to give specific help, but I would absolutely love to help you. So please reach out to us and I would be more than happy.
Thank you to all of our attendees for joining us today and being vulnerable and open and sharing your stories so that other disabled parents can have the best experience possible when they have new babies. As I said, you'll be receiving a link to the recording as soon as that's available. And in the recording, you will be able to see all participants. We apologize for the technical issue with Zoom and ASL. It's a problem on Zoom's end, and we are working to find a solution to increase that access because it's not okay. But on that note, I want to thank our attendees once again, and please join our mailing list, and which Amy put a link to in the chat so you can hear about our future webinars. Thanks, everyone.